All right. So this is the third time I'm coming in today. I just have a bunch of energy for this, and it's actually really, it's like, right now, I don't know when you'll be watching this, but it's like July 26th in Boston. So it's like really humid and hot. So I'm pretty sweaty. And we have a special guest here sitting next to me, which is Luke. And we'll see, he might give us a little bit of a little ASMR treat for to wind down at the end. Oh, my goodness. He's a star. There's no, I mean, honestly, like he is just not to be ignored. There's no small character here. Oh my god. It's really, he's just infinitely watchable. He's really cuddly. He's really cuddly, and he's being like really kind of cute. Now I'm used to it. But he does have his bum in my face, but he's rolling into me. So anyway. All right. So what are we reading about now? We just totally he took the book kind of like for a ride here. So yeah, it's a little wrinkly now. Okay, so I'm gonna read this part. I don't know how long this is gonna take. It's kind of short. And what's the next part? So it's like we've got miserliness and martyrdom versus destructive generosity. And then we've got devotion, love is a verb, and humanization. And that gets into industrialization. And yeah, and then we'll get into themes and stuff. But so we're kind of we're wrapping up the basics here. It's really distracting having my kitty. Let's see if you can. I'm going to move the microphone in front of him. You might even be able to hear the purring, honestly. Yeah. Give them a little sniff. Yeah. Oh my god, it's chaos. Yeah. I'm like a supreme. Why is he showing me his bum? All right, this is not a vet exam here. Okay. I'm a supremely permissive when it comes to Luke, unless he's going to do something terrible. And there's no getting on the counters in the kitchen, right? Right, Kitty? But as you can see, I've actually been on business calls, and he's walked across the screen. And people, like, you can tell they're kind of like, that's kind of a hot take for this conversation. But anyway, sorry, there's a lot of Luke time here with like only parts of him visible. But anyway, all right, so this actually might cut this down shorter, believe it or not. So today the two readings that I did were from giving, generosity, and receiving, gratitude. And you want to get back into that, go back, rewind back, or look back, and then talking a bit about balance. And very specifically, what we're talking about is how giving and receiving are two parts of actually a function, and that for love and the development of love, a good place to start to look is in which piece of this comes easy and which piece comes hard. So if you're a big giver, receiving is hard. Working on receiving, we'll get more into that later. And then also if you're really good at, sort of like taking, there's, first of all, like getting better, building more capacity at like receiving, like feeling grateful, and also giving. This cat is wild tonight. He's like licking. He's coming very close to licking the book. Okay, so I'm I'm supremely distracted on this, and I feel like, and this is without a doubt a one take situation. Okay, and there's cat hair all over this. It's kind of a lot. So now with miserliness and martyrdom versus destructive generosity, we're looking, and this is on page 161. We're looking at what happens when we're talking about balancing the give and take, generosity and gratitude, and now we're looking at these different facets when they're like driven to kind of like extremes in their imbalance. So here we go. So miserliness is on the opposite side of the spectrum to destructive generosity, which is giving when we don't have enough for ourselves. These two behavior patterns represent polarities in the adaptations of this hub and impact how we love and connect. Miserliness is the opposite and opposing expression of feeling worthy and loved, a fear that we don't have enough and that if we don't look out for ourselves, nobody else will. For some folks who are blocked in their ability to give, the act brings up paralyzing anxiety and defenses. The slight discomfort of loss that comes with giving can be emotionally overwhelming for someone with a shrinking adaptation in this hub, someone who will tend to avoid attachment to people, along with the vulnerabilities that attachments create. And so, excessive boundaries, protections, and rationalizations are erected. Yeah. I think one of the things about this, like, could be such a long discussion, and actually in this particular case, I feel like it's like it would be great as an actual conversation, to talk to people, to talk to you about your experience with people who are, we'll call it miserly, that are like very, very hyper conservative about giving, and in ways where it feels hurtful, like especially if there's like the notion that, and sometimes rightfully so, sometimes maybe like not, that the person in question who's being miserly has enough to be able to support somebody they love or help somebody who is in distress. And as kind of mentioned in this, that comes from the fear that there won't be enough. And a lot of this goes back, like there's certain patterning that it starts out in the first, second, and even to a certain extent the third hub, but the first and the second hub establish a lot of patternings that repeat. And one of the patterns in the first hub is trust that your needs will be met. And this is like an interruption in that, which is, it's like a severe distrust that needs will be met. And it's a very hard adaptation to interface with, because it feels really hurtful. It feels very closed off, very protected, uncaring, feels like, in some ways, it's a capacity to care, but it's not personal. I mean, this pattern, so I think that one of the things that's hard for people is to not take this pattern personally, that this adaptation really is going to predate, and it's going to come, its depth is going to come from survival. This is another reason why building the hubs kind of one bit by bit, kind of in the order of operations is it really matters because one of the things that you'll see is like an interrupted first hub. We won't get too into that with people who are miserly. And this can, yeah, I'm actually not gonna like physically type this because I don't want to get into that with what we do here, but just it really does have to do with a certain level of trust in physical security. So, okay. So on we go. There's there is a natural twinge of discomfort with giving that comes from our deep reflex of safety and protection, which may register giving as loss. So donating stained hand-me-downs, used socks, or anything that needs repair is not the kind of giving I mean here. We feel when we give. The hesitation before hitting a donate button or the internal process and evaluation we do before offering money to a friend in need is part of giving. It's like exercising a capacity. The admiration of giving is like commending another person's ability to tolerate that pinch of sacrifice. It's kind of one way to look at it, I guess. It seemed like it probably seemed really clever when I wrote it. It's not that clever. It's not that clever. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, there's another side to giving. The friend, the pinch masochist, who picks up the tab for the entire table but doesn't have the money to pay their rent. If giving makes you feel safe, even when it puts the safety and security of your basic needs at risk, it's worth noticing whether contribution is experienced as a conditional requirement for belonging. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is something we'll get way more into this as we get further into the chapter and the adaptations. Yeah, that's kind of like, honestly, like my read on this addition to this like section, the miserliness and martyrdom versus destructive generosity. I'm not sure how necessary it is in reading it. It feels like kind of like final thoughts on the matter of the giving and receiving, and then balancing that, and then it's kind of a note of like, okay, it's not. It doesn't feel super complete, and it's a little kind of like is a little too much shtick in it for me. It doesn't. It's doesn't. It's like okay. It's like a couple of decent thoughts kind of like strung together. And this is, I mean, this is one of the things about having written this is that that's hard to. It's kind of hard to imagine now, honestly, seeing the book and it like looks like a real thing that exists in the world, and but the process of sort of actualizing that into being is a very real cat that's like noodling around, um, is bringing it into being, it was like taking it from like honestly initially just sort of a hodgepodge of thoughts and a process of things that were kind of like trying to figure out how they all fit together. And there were often times, and there's a couple that have come up. You can kind of tell, and I don't know if this is something that folks would notice. Nobody's mentioned it yet, but I'm sure, or I imagine some point someone will. Is there are some sections where the continuity is like very loosely sewed together. It's like it's kind of like, yeah, these can all sort of like fit under this heading, these notions, and that kind of a case can be built that all of these kind of notions fit together. And some of that comes from like these pieces existing in other places and wanting it to stay in the book and moving it somewhere where I'm like, yeah, this can be stitched into that. Like I want that to be in there. So there's some of that, and I'd say that this miserliness and martyrdom, versus destructive generosity. I almost feel like it could just be miserliness. Is it? Yeah, it like almost doesn't even match the heading because it's like, where's the martyrdom? Is you know, let me think here on that. Yeah, there isn't much mention of martyrdom. It's basically like miserliness versus destructive generosity. Yeah, I think that one. I don't think martyrdom makes that. I'm actually gonna make a note in this copy of the book on that because I don't, and I think we might have. I'm gonna put an X on that. Ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of book in here. And honestly, it's quite shocking to me that it is as like well put together as it is for the sheer volume. I mean, it wasn't without help. There are certain, there were a lot of, extraordinary proofreader to the stars. And I had a extraordinary editor who worked for like 18 months on it. And it's not a small thing to have that many other people in the book. And then I think there's some other people, but me too. I went through the thing. Actually, before I submitted the manuscript in the stage that's before the proofreading, where it goes to layout and then it goes to the proofreading. I read it I think like twice, and one of the reads was the entire book. Now it's like good gravy. The entire book read through the option to have it dictated back to you. So like listening to it because you can find a lot of stuff. So I just listen and I'd catch stuff. But yeah. So I guess this wound up being less a conversation about the fourth hub and more a conversation about editing. Or producing a book. Producing a book is probably the better way to phrase that. Yeah, producing a book. So yeah, today, I mean, for me today, I thought a lot about the dichotomy of the give and take. Yeah. And as we continue in this chapter, this will build on this theme. And one of the somatic techniques that we use in this hub is breathing, pranayama practice. And so like taking in breath and releasing it. And even doing exercises to like note where in a breathing pattern there's ease relative to strain is one part. Luke just took a big inhale. So he's a good inhaler. Probably a good exhaler too. Quite honestly, he's great. He's pretty great at everything. So yeah, I don't really, I think I've kind of like run out of gas today on this. So I'm gonna wrap it up. This one was probably a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it started out with my cat, and then I like read a little bit, and then talked about how I don't think that section should be in the book. Oh my god, where's my? This isn't. How was that? How's that for a installment? If you have any questions about producing a book, put them in the comments. I'm sure I'm happy to answer them. Yeah. Or permissive cat parenting where you just kinda let your cat live his best life wherever he wants to, except on the kitchen counters. Okay, anyway, so thank you for watching. Thank you for I mean, it really so one thing I'll say is I'm committed to doing these, to continuing to do these all the way through reading the entire book. With that said, in the spirit of this hub and like the reality of my experience with it, the give and take in this is absolutely part of what makes this give something to me in a sense of like hearing it's like Mira it gets like honestly is like MVP now. Like there's I don't know if anybody even has a shot at overtaking. I mean, honestly, so it's kind of like everything else is kind of like, there's still top 5 slots, but I think number 1 is like is taken. But joking aside, it really means a lot to me. This is a lot to give. This is a lot to give. The book is a lot to give. I spent years working on it. And hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, if you hold the book in your hands, it's not really that surprising. And that this is, I mean, it's something that kind of transcends a lot of notions that I've previously held before. And the process, just for me alone, is worth the price of admission. And my desire it's not even like it's honestly it's something just there's something that's like a stronger impetus that's like kind of bigger than me that like wants this to exist in the world. So showing up for this, even when there is no evidence of people paying attention to it, or thankfully for those of you who are watching right now, that means a lot to me. That is absolutely that's just it. Yeah, it's so meaningful for me. But right now when I'm recording this and there's nobody watching, that it's like an unwavering commitment to this, that it finds the people who need it. And that unwavering commitment I experience as being much larger than myself, and also that I get to have the experience with it that contributes to my own experience. So there is that. Okay. So without any further ado, me and my cat, I like brush literally like a kitten off of him and they're still like fur for days. He's got like that double coat. If you want more cat pictures, follow me on Instagram on cat pictures. Okay, enough laughs. Let's wrap this thing up. Let's go watch something funny on TV. I don't know if I feel like doing that, but I don't know. Maybe just pet my cat and relax for a little bit. Listen to a podcast. I don't know. By myself tonight. So sending you lots of love anyway. And I look forward to talking to you next time. Bye.